Thank you. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I'm humbled by the honor of having been asked to speak among so many people who very clearly have so much more to offer than I do in terms of expertise and experience. It's therefore a sign of respect that I will keep my contribution as brief as possible. That may mean that some of what I say is somewhat more abrupt than I would want it to be. I'll be happy to provide more detail and balance in bilateral discussions later on. Before I begin, allow me two caveats and a dedication. First caveat. I am, and have been for the past 18 years, above all, a development practitioner. I'm neither a diplomat nor, strictly speaking, an academic. Second, based on what little I remember of 6 years of Latin and 4 years of ancient Greek, I feel very close to Socrates. Both in that I've found that indeed, the more I learn, the less I can claim to know, and in that I'm a strong believer in the virtues of a dialectic thought process. In other words, for a thought or a proposition to evolve into an insight and thus a useful basis for action, it must be tested against a counter-proposition or an antithesis, brought up by at least one level by means of synthesis, the balancing of pro and counter-arguments. The dedication, Wolfgang mentioned it yesterday. I would like to dedicate this presentation to the memory of Javed Sirak, head of the Afghanistan Rural Enterprise Development Program. Those of you who met him will no doubt remember him as one of the brightest and most promising leaders of his generation. My presentation comprises 3 sets of 3 points, structured around the past, the present, and the future. The past. How did we get here? First, when the international community decided to invade Afghanistan, it underestimated the challenges, largely because it failed to define a clear, joint set of objectives beyond deposing the Taliban. Second, most of the thinking, discussing, and strategizing only began several years after the invasion. Let us look at just one example. This map existed back in the 1990s. It looks pretty complicated. Please pay attention to the area down here on this map, presented as largely uninhabited. This next map, then, was produced in 2008. It clearly states that it oversimplifies the picture, but nonetheless, it does dazzle the outsider with details that take a long time to comprehend. We have 5 different Pashtun tribes, 4 of them Durrani. Not only would any villager, literate or not, have no problem knowing what the distribution of tribes is in their area, but he would also know in real time what the local balance of power is and how this affects law and order at the village level. For an outsider, this will always be beyond reach, no matter what technology we employ and no matter how many resources we mobilize. Third, to sum it up in the briefest of terms, the international community never has been and never will be in a position to understand the intricacies of the country and its people sufficiently to decide what is right for Afghanistan. This insufficient knowledge, combined with vastly divergent agendas, has led to an enormous fragmentation of international support, despite all the rhetoric to the contrary. The present. Where are we now? First, everybody seems to agree that what we most need for stability and development in Afghanistan is credible control by the government. As these two maps from December 2009 show, things have not been going well, to put it mildly. This first map shows civil servants' access for 8 ministries, ranging from agriculture to education, finance, water, and power, throughout Afghanistan's 398 districts, where dark green represents 100% access and pink represents 0 access. The second map shows the change from December 2008 to December 2009, where white indicates no change, shades of green signal improved access, shades of red indicate a decrease in access, with the darkest shade representing a deterioration of access by 30 to 100%. Note that some of the districts in white reported no change, as a further deterioration from 0 is not possible. Second, in many parts of the country, we're at a low point of credibility of both the government and the international community. This has many reasons, chief among which are corruption and elite capture, and a lack of understanding among the international community of the very basics what credibility is based upon in Afghanistan. Not contracts or strategies, nor, referring back to the previous session, even results. What really matters are trust relationships. Third, very much in this regard hinges on perception. It is not by coincidence that the international community has fared poorly in terms of perception. Under General Petraeus, efforts to manage communication better have been stepped up considerably, with some effect. I would nonetheless argue that this has been too little, too late. As the main underlying problem remains and cannot be spin-doctored away. 2010 research in the South has revealed that 3/4 of interviewees believe that foreigners disrespect their religion and traditions. 3/4 of interviewees believe that working with foreign forces is wrong. More than 2/3 believe that NATO ISAF does not protect them. And well over half believe that the international community is in Afghanistan for its own benefit, to destroy or occupy the country, or to destroy Islam. I'm not sure the picture needs explanation. It doesn't help the perception of the international community that all most people get to see are intimidating vehicles, traveling at high speeds and forcing all other traffic off the road. That's of course not even speaking of the population that has had direct contact with house searches or aerial bombardments. The perception of the aggressive stance of the occupying forces goes far beyond just the immediate victims. The future. Where do we go from here? First, operational space. This could be the most controversial part of my presentation, and I do ask you to please not take this as an offense in any way. The lack of distinction between military, humanitarian, and development actors and efforts in Afghanistan has been extremely damaging. Though of course I will not be heard. If I thought it might help, I would get down on my knees and implore NATO to stick to engagement in the military and security realm. There's plenty to be done there. Development and humanitarian assistance require both levels of expertise and a degree of neutrality that ISAF cannot and should not have. This picture does require a brief explanation. I Googled Afghanistan humanitarian space for images. This was one of the first ones that came up. I hope the experts in international humanitarian law in the room agree that this cannot be the way to deliver humanitarian aid or development aid. Second, commitment. It's been said so often recently that it seems to have lost information content / meaning. The international community must genuinely embrace the well-being of the people of Afghanistan on the people of Afghanistan's terms as the sole and ultimate objective of our engagement in Afghanistan. In reality, this is far more complex than it sounds. For how do we determine what kind of well-being the people of Afghanistan truly want? Quite naturally, the discourse is being dominated by eloquent and powerful elites. It would be a critical contribution of the UN to promote participation of the population outside the elites. But for the moment, that has been hampered by a multitude of factors, both inside and outside the UN. I will not go into any detail on this slide. All I'm really showing it for is to illustrate that there's always a story behind the story behind the story. You may not be able to read it. On the right-hand side, we have opium production in metric tons, and on the left-hand side, the blue part of the graph is the price for fresh opium at farm gate in US dollars per kilogram. While there has been a significant decline in poppy production since 2007, the downward trend in cultivation has already stopped. And with the strong surge in prices, we're almost certain to see production going up again over the next few years. Third, and finally, Afghan ownership and leadership. This is really what this panel is about. There are others here who are far better qualified to speak on this, though. Let me conclude, therefore, by saying I'm more confident for the future of Afghanistan than I am for most of the other countries I've worked in. Largely because of the natural leadership potential Afghanistan has in all parts of the country and among all age groups. David Sirac was an outstanding example. While I'm deeply saddened by his untimely death, I am happy to say that he was not the only young Afghan leader I have met who had the vision and the skills and the commitment to build a brighter future for Afghanistan. I hope we can be more successful in the years to come in supporting and enabling Afghanistan's very own leadership potential. Thank you.
Dr. Gruber, could I please sit? I'm going to pass out.
We can go to, you want me to go? Good.